Hello, my friends. This is Andy Falco Jimenez, come to you from Orange County, California. You know what? It's suddenly become odd to go live by myself. I normally go live on a show that we do not every day, but nearly every day with my wife called the Living Fearless Devotional. If you don't know about it, go ahead and do a search on the internet. You can find it on YouTube, Living Fearless Devotional, Rumble, and a number of other locations. You can find it there. So it just feels funny. We're going to be talking about this Officer Kim Potter case where she accidentally shot a suspect in a car stop where her trainee made contact, and in the midst of apparently arresting him for some reason, I got to admit, I did not watch every bit of the trial. So there's going to be some details I'm not fully aware of, but that doesn't change my opinion on what it is we're going to be talking about today. How it's not her fault that this happened. It's not obviously the suspect's fault. It's not really even the trainee's fault as to what happened. It is much bigger than that. And so I want to talk about these things that I did not hear talked about in the trial, in much of the case, and in many of the reviews that I saw. And so we're going to get to that. So why do this 3 or 4 days after the trial is over? It's because Christmas hit. So if you're watching this later sometime and don't know, it was the day before Christmas Eve that the ruling was, or not the ruling, but the decision was made by the jury to convict her of 2 different charges of manslaughter. And that essentially says that there was some negligence on her part, that she was negligent, that she made bad decisions, that it was her inability to make the right decisions, to resort to her training that cost this man her life. Now, on some level, that may be true, but again, I'm going to make a case that if they would have had a different expert on the case, that they could have clearly proved that it's much bigger than that, and it's one of these things that you have to look at slightly differently than the way that the jury looked at it. And I think the reason they missed it is because nobody brought up these points and these issues that are extremely important for a jury to understand when a law enforcement officer is put into a sudden into a position that suddenly puts them in a high stressful situation that they may or may not have ever been in before. And that changes everything. All right. So if you don't know that I have a podcast out of this particular channel, which is called the AndyFalcoPodcast.com, go there and you will find the podcast that you can subscribe to. All right. So I want to lay a little bit of foundation. And that is, number one, the Brooklyn Center Police Department is a very small police department in regard to police departments across the United States, North America. It is a small one. I'm going to read from their website. It says, our department is made up of 49 licensed full-time police officers and 22 full and part-time non-sworn staff, which means clerks, ID techs possibly that are non-sworn, to property attendants who take care of any kind of evidence that comes in and files it properly, and so on and so forth. There's secretaries and a number of other people that have roles in a law enforcement office, a police department, that are not sworn police officers that carry a gun and weapons and go out on calls. Even report writers that go out on calls are not sworn police officers. They often wear a uniform, like a cadet uniform, but they are not sworn officers that go on these calls or make car stops. They're not lawfully able to make car stops. And so 49 police officers that are full-time is a fairly small police department. You have smaller that may have, 5, which would be like a chief of police, a captain, lieutenant, maybe 3 or 4 sergeants and a couple patrolmen. You may have something that small. You may maybe not have a lieutenant. You may have chief of police, a captain, and then maybe 2 captains and police officers. It just depends on the layout of the police department. In Orange County, I don't know, we may have a couple police departments that are down to those numbers, maybe La Palma Police Department, Cypress Police Department, Los Alamitos, maybe that small. But for the most part, you get into the hundreds of police officers. Brea Police Department, maybe another one of those small ones. And so I'm telling you this because as an Anaheim police officer, which I was a Anaheim police officer for 21 years, we had somewhere in the neighborhood when I first started 380 or something like that when I first started in the late 80s, and then went up to something like 500, if I'm not mistaken, about the time I retired. I've continued to train law enforcement officers, not only when I was a police officer, but after I retired for several years all over the country and all over the world, for that matter. Small departments, the police departments. I've worked side by side with big departments and small police departments. This is important for you to know that what I'm about to tell you, it comes from experience and from knowledge that I have with working with and training officers that come from small departments and big police departments. Being a small department doesn't mean you don't have action, but quite often that can be the case because it would be unlikely that you would have very small police departments that would be in areas that have, very large crime areas. Unlike, unless it was like in LA where you have like Bell Police Department, which I'm not sure if they still exist. They might, but I'm not sure, which is a fairly small police department, but it's an area that has a high drug area and have probably a lot of carjackings, robberies, aggravated assaults and that kind of thing that happen in a smaller department. But typically as you move east across the country into, locations like Minnesota, that kind of stuff, I can pretty much bet that in this small department, 49 licensed police officers in a department that, let's see what the makeup is here. It said earlier, but there was something like 39,000. I think it was 39,000 population. 29,000 are employed. So that means you have 10,000 unemployed. When I look at the pictures, it's a mixture. It's a lot of Caucasians. You see some Hispanics, and you see a few blacks, at least in the demographics. And so it's a fairly balanced community. But I don't see, based on the pictures I'm looking at, that it looks like that it's a high intensity city and department where the police officers, the 49 police officers, are daily going out there dealing with carjackings, robberies in progress, aggravated assaults that they're rolling to, shooting, drive-by shootings. Just based on what I see on this police department's website and the city's website, it doesn't look like a city where the officers are going out on a daily basis and dealing with these kinds of crimes. What I would imagine in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, is that they're probably quite often dealing with maybe some traffic violations, traffic accidents, maybe a few burglaries here and there, a couple petty thefts, and domestic violence cases, parking violations, cat in the tree calls, suspicious circumstances, that kind of thing. But I'm guessing not a lot of homicides, not a lot of shootings, not a lot of drive-by shootings and that kind of stuff. Again, I've never been to Brooklyn Center as far as I know. I may have driven through it because I've had a couple cases in Minnesota, but I'm telling you, based on what I can see on the website, and anybody that knows, please let me know for sure that, there's some other stuff going on. I was looking for the demographics and of course I can't find it. City data, center history, community profile, and it's just not a lot of information. I can tell you that right now. City strategic goals. Again, it looks like a pretty small town type of look and that kind of stuff. This is really important because I'm going to get to the reason why it's important in just a second. So understand that I'm laying out a foundation for this police department. I could tell you for me what would be in relationship to comparing. You got Los Angeles Police Department, which is fairly close. You got LA County Sheriff's Department, Orange County Sheriff's Department. You got Santa Ana PD, Anaheim PD. In this area are the cities that are handling carjacking, shootings, drive-by shootings, gang calls, a lot of narcotics, especially back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. There was a lot of high crime happening in many areas of Anaheim. Much of it has been cleaned up since then, but on a daily basis, we are going to some type of robbery or a carjacking or a shooting or a stabbing or in progress aggravated assault, especially on the weekends on a regular basis. It was something that we as officers knew how to respond to often. We were often fighting with suspect, with a lot of domestic violence, that kind of stuff. On the opposite side of things, we would sometimes assist departments like Brea Police Department, which was a neighboring and is a neighboring city of Anaheim, or let's see, what other one would there be? Not Orange, but let's just go with Brea. So Brea is a pretty pretty much a type of bedroom community where not a lot of those things would happen. So when a drive-by shooting would happen or a robbery would happen, Anaheim Police Department, Orange County Sheriff's Police Department would often go and assist or help out because they didn't have a lot of experience in dealing with these types of crime. And so I would often, with my canine, go and assist on crimes that were in progress or a high level type of crime where there were bodies on the ground, suspects that were actively fleeing and we were actively searching for, because the officers did not have a lot of experience in doing this. And so on occasion we would come over and find them. They had 3 canine handlers when I was an officer. We had 4, and quite often their teams would call us and we would go and we would often find suspects their dogs would miss because, again, their canine teams did not have a lot of experience searching for active fleeing suspects, and they would often miss or not know how to search for somebody within a perimeter and locate them. I would come in and I probably found 4 or 5 suspects that either their canines were not able to, or they just weren't able to conduct a search that was where they were able to kind of figure out how things were to work out. And that comes from experience. This is something that we're going to deal with as a country because of defunding and the types of things that have been going on with law enforcement, where police officers with experience have been retiring, where you're losing officers that have the experience that know how to deal with these kinds of situations on a regular basis. And without that experience, without officers that know how to deal with high crime situations, active, shooting in progress, robbery in progress, that kind of stuff, unless you have experience, they become a little bit more difficult, and officers don't respond mentally in a way that either solves a problem or keeps people safe. And then sometimes you have mistakes that are made. All right. So just understand, I'm laying out a foundation for this department. Doesn't appear to be one where the officers have a lot of experience, even if with 26 years on. And that's the case with Kim Potter. It appears that she has somewhere in the neighborhood of 23 or 26 years on, and was actually even a field training officer. All right. So I hope I've laid that foundation pretty firmly, that she's an officer, just probably dealt with a lot of report calls like burglaries, robberies after they've occurred and gone there after their cold crime scenes, auto thefts, parking, traffic violations, traffic accident violations, domestic violence, that kind of stuff. But not a lot of these other things where you have to make a decision whether you're going to shoot and kill somebody, and probably not had that experience, even though she's been on for 26 years. It is not uncommon in law enforcement in the United States, and you would not think this is true, where there's officers that have never pulled their gun out of their holster. There's officers that have never shot at anybody. There's officers that have never been in pursuit of a suspect vehicle, driving at speeds of 75, 100 miles an hour, trying to catch somebody, that have ever been on the search for somebody, had to set up a perimeter and try to find somebody that is armed and dangerous. There's many police officers that have never done that. And this, again, is what I'm getting the feeling about this Brooklyn Center Police Department. Again, this is not something that I heard that was brought up in the case, not in any of the news reports that I read, any of the testimony that I heard as I was actively watching most of it. Again, I watched probably 50 to 60% of the testimony, mostly the officer's testimony, but I didn't hear anything about the demographics of the department, their experience in dealing with the life and death situation of using a gun or a taser, or any of the other tools that are found on somebody's belt as a police officer. And so that experience, as far as I know, was not brought up as an issue that may be important when we get into some of these other details that I'm going to bring up very shortly. All right. So with all that in mind, All right, we have a car stop for what it appears to be an expired registration. That's all I know. If there's anything that is not correct, please comment and please let me know whether you're watching live or on the replay. That if there's anything else that is brought up in this car stop that I need to know that was discovered at the time of the call. And I don't care what happened afterwards. There may have been the driver may have been had a warrant out for his arrest for murder. But if you didn't know it before he was shot and killed, it's not relevant. Did we know it at the time that this car stop was made, or just prior to the wrestling match that occurred, or just prior to the shot ringing out that killed him? Then it would be important. If it was found out afterwards, not important. This kind of stuff gets brought up all the time that, well, this guy was wanted for murder. Well, when did you know he's wanted for murder? Well, after we killed him. No, you can't kill somebody because of something you found out later. All right. So if there's anything else, what I know at the time of the car stop, it was for a expired registration. Okay. So you got the Kim Potter and you got her officer or their training officer who was probably driving at the time, made the car stop, pulled the car over. The car pulled over with the driver who would eventually be shot and killed. But the driver pulled over as normal. And then for whatever reason, I made a lot of car stops on expired registration. I can't tell you unless I was looking for something else. Maybe I had information that the driver in the vehicle might be wanted in another crime. Again, that's good information to know, what led to getting him out of the vehicle. Maybe the vehicle matches, but maybe the suspect didn't match. So you need to get him out to ask him, what's the deal with the vehicle? Were you driving this the entire day? Why was, after the car was stopped, why was the suspect asked to come out and beginning the process of handcuffing? None of this, at least in what I've read, makes any sense up to this point. But I'm going to start the video at the point where we see the trainee police officer is getting the driver out of the vehicle and begins to what appears to be handcuffing him for one reason. I don't know. I've not been able to figure that out. Now, again, if you know, make sure and type it into the comments. Oh, one thing I almost forgot. We're going to be seeing some graphic content. It's not that graphic. You can't really see any blood or anything, but I just want you to know that somebody's going to be shot when we're watching this video. And there's a good chance that I may use some foul language because it's going to be important later on when I talk about some certain things. So just understand that you may hear the F word or the S word or some other word that may come out of my mouth. It just depends what it is we're talking about at the time. So be aware. So if you have kids in the car, you may want to turn down the volume because it's going to be important to talk about some of these things that are going to be coming up. And I think there's some cussing on the video if I'm not mistaken. All right. So I'm going to bring up the car stop here. And it's going to be important for you to watch. I'm going to play it in full speed to begin with, and then we're going to come back and slow it down just a little bit because we have that ability. Remember, at the time, the officers have no way of slowing anything down. It's all happening at real time, real speed, and they have to make some really quick decisions really fast. All right, so here we go.
Around 2 p.m. local time Sunday, police pulled over Wright. The police chief says they stopped Dante Wright because he had an expired registration on his license plate. The release footage begins minutes into the stop and shows police walking up to the car, and then Wright is seen stepping out of his vehicle. Police then tried to take Wright into custody after discovering he has an outstanding warrant. The video shows Wright begins to resist as cuffs are placed on him and he gets back into the vehicle.
As I watch the video.
All right. So that's how fast it happens. It was the car stop, got the man out, the man, 21 years old, something like that. I'm not sure how old he is. I think maybe 19. He gets him out and they're fiddling around. The guy twists out, the suspect twists out and gets back into the car. And it really appears strongly that he's going to drive away. You see the officer, Kim Potter, she had a piece of paper in her right hand. I don't know if it was his registrations. I don't know what it is. If she's maybe taking notes on something, but she has that in her hand. She's now got to make the conscious decision of dropping that out of her hand to grab what she thinks is her taser, but by mistake grabs her duty weapon, her pistol, this gun like this in her hand, and points it at him. You hear her say, "I'm going to tase him," and then she says, "Taser, taser, taser." The backup officer knows what that means. That means let go of him, because if she were to shock him while the officer is holding on to him, he's going to get also shocked from the taser. So he's got to let go and back off. And when she sees he does that, then she fires what she thinks is the taser, but in fact is the weapon, and shoots him. He's able to drive away, but he dies as he's probably driving the vehicle, crashes his car, and then either dies at the scene or dies on the way to the hospital. But you can see how quickly all of this happened. I want to play it one more time, and I just want you to watch all the dynamics. I want you to see the paper, because it's important you see the paper. I want you to see the yellow taser on the trainee's belt. See where do you see it? Does it flash in front of your eyes? Do you focus on it? Do you see it? And then I want you to see how quickly everything transpired from the time that he gets out of the car, how quickly she goes up, and then the fight happens, how quickly he starts to get in the vehicle, suddenly see the weapon, and then she fires. I want you to see how quickly all of that happens. Let me go ahead and just pull this back a little bit, and I just want you to watch it one more time. Here we go.
2 p.m. local time Sunday, police pulled over Wright. The police chief says they stopped Dante Wright because he had an expired registration on his license plate. The release footage begins minutes into the stop and shows police walking up to the car, and then Wright is seen stepping out of his vehicle. Police then tried to take Wright into custody after discovering he has an outstanding warrant. The video shows Wright begins to resist as cuffs are placed on him, and he gets back into the vehicle.
As I watched the video.
All right, from about the time that she went hands-on, it was about 16 seconds. So in 16 seconds, a lot happens, a lot transpires. She goes up to help with the handcuffing. She sees that her partner is having a little bit of difficulty for whatever reason. She sees that he loses control, and he pulls out of both her hands and his hands. And then you see him get in the vehicle. She has a piece of paper in her hand. She has to drop that. She then has to decide that she's going to pull a weapon. She believes it's going to be the taser. And then she aims the taser, lets her officer partner know that she's going to use the taser, which is back to training, the training of what to do when she's using a taser, yells taser, 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 fires her weapon, and shoots him with an actual gun. All right. Why did I show you that twice? Because I want you to see everything that's going on in this video. There's the first thing that lets me know that both officers, the trainee, obviously, because he's new, and Kim Potter have very little experience in dealing with a suspect that is about to fight and jump in their car and drive away. Because if we were to go back, and let me just see if I can set this up so you can see it. If we get back to a place here where you can see the size advantage that I'm not sure if you can see it on my screen. There's some things in the way, but you can see. Let me see if I can get rid of this.
And then Wright.
Yeah, it's hard to see, but you can see that he clearly has the size advantage. The backup officer, or the primary officer, or the trainee has the size advantage over the suspect. Now, the problem here, again, I'm going to say that these officers surely could have done a better job. If I, as the training officer, would have seen how the trainee was going into the handcuffing process of the suspect, number one, I would have said, "What the hell are you doing?" If it's only for a expired registration, what are we doing? What's happening here? I would have stopped this situation quickly, or I would have. It depends on the phase. I would have said to myself, "All right, he's made this decision, and maybe it hasn't communicating." Usually what you do as a trainee and a trainer is you develop the understanding that, hey, if you're going to make a decision to handcuff somebody, you got to let me know why. You got to tell me what's happening. You have to say out loud what's going to be going on. And you need to move the suspect away from the opening of the vehicle. You want to bring them more closer to the trunk. You don't want to try to handcuff somebody at the opening of the vehicle because they can grab the inside of the vehicle and use that to be able to get inside the vehicle. Every police officer knows where to move somebody so that when you're handcuffing them, they don't have an advantage of any sort. You want to take any advantage that's in their reach, in their grasp, away from them. Even if you think that you're bigger than them, even if you think that you're stronger than them, why take a chance? We would have clearly, as a trainer of this trainee, would have said, move them back farther, move them away from the opening, close the driver's door, bring them out to the back. What are you doing this for at this position? First mistake. Again, we would expect a trainee to make this mistake, and that's not that big of a deal. But why did she go in there and half-assed the positioning of her hand where the guy was able to pull out? When you make a decision to handcuff somebody, you want them to know that they are not to fight with you. You want them to know that fighting is not an option. You don't go in mamby-pamby with soft hands and ask permission. Hey, may I handcuff you? No. There's something bigger going on here. And this is where the problem starts. This is why I think, although they may be culpable, both the backup or the trainee and the primary officer or the trainer, Kim Potter, have some fault. It's the fault that they did not handle the situation the way that it should have been. Now, this is right off the bat. Whose fault is that? This is where I'm going to come in and begin to probably be a little controversial, because is it their fault? Or is it the police department's fault? Is it their fault or the police academy's fault? Is it their fault or is it their supervisor's fault? I'm here to tell you that I look at hundreds of cases on an annual basis in these types of investigations. I still do it to this day. I investigate officers who are making decisions about the arrest of somebody that they have either stopped or been called to in regard to a search warrant or some type of in progress incident where they've been called to, or they've initiated the stop or the contact of some sort. And I investigate these cases all over North America, cases in United States, all the way across to New York, up into Canada. And I look at these cases and I have to watch all of these videos over and over again. And I begin in spots like this, not where the shooting took place, but what happened at the beginning. What do I see as a problem? The problem is that these officers were not prepared. They were not trained properly. They were not prepared to handle the situation. Why is he flat-footed? Why is he so delicately trying to put this guy in handcuffs? You gave him the idea that he might get away. He should have never had the idea that he could get away. He should have never had the idea that he could escape from the situation. The trainee is clearly much larger and potentially much stronger than the person that they were about to try to handcuff. And then when she comes in, what's she doing? As the trainer, she should have came in with a full arm and a full commitment to take this man into custody. And that was neither done. All right. So this right off the bat, this tells me that this team, these two officers, were not adequately prepared to take on this situation that they put themselves into. All right. And I want to make this sure that this is clear. They put themselves in this situation. The trainee put themselves in this situation because for whatever reason, he decided to start handcuffing this young adult on a traffic stop that was merely what appears to be a registration violation, that he was not did not have the right tags on his license plate. All right, so let's go back, and we're going to show this a few times, and I'm sorry, but I tried to warn you that we're going to be looking at this situation a couple times, but here we go. So I just want you to see what we're looking at and what I evaluate as I'm looking at these kinds of things. I'm going to actually hit
the release footage begins minutes.
You've heard the narrative enough, but you can see how he's just kind of like fiddling with the handcuffs. I'm going to show you that again. Look how he's fiddling with the handcuffs. He gets him out and he's like looking which end goes around the guy's wrist. And then he doesn't quite have it. He doesn't have the guy pulled off balance. And you see her hand. That hand position is not a hand position of advantage. Taking your hand like this and you try to hold on to a 10-year-old. You try to hold on to a 5-year-old. But if this is their arm on the microphone, actually, I'm going to use this microphone so you don't have to hear. But if I'm going to grab this microphone and somebody will pull it, it's going to come right out of my hand. I have no position of advantage. I have no strength. The man is going to pull away. The woman is going to pull away. The little toddler is going to pull away because that is not a position. What is she doing? This hand needs to come through, or it needs to come through and grab from another position. Get your arm in there and get your whole body, into this handcuffing process. Not this position. This position is a position of weakness. And that's the first sign that the kid is going, or the man, whatever you want to call him, he's a young adult, is going to say, wait, these people don't know what they're doing. I can feel the hesitation in the man that's behind me. I can feel the hesitation in the woman behind me. And again, we have a responsibility. And I'm sorry, I'm going to start getting heated here and because I get the same when I'm teaching police officers. I've trained police officers for 30 years, all over the United States, all over the country. And there's nothing worse for me to see is a mamby-pamby pussy way of going in and trying to handcuff somebody. I can be a nice guy, right? I was pretty well known in the police department as a pretty even-headed guy, a level-headed guy, and a nice guy. But when it came to making that transition from interview, from first contacts on a car stop to making the decision to arrest somebody, there had to be a transition from nice guy to saying, listen, you are not going to fight with me. If we're going to fight, it's going to end poorly. And you communicate with them both verbally and with your body positioning and your hand positioning. You can do it in a way that not anybody around you even knows that it's happening. I've whispered plenty of times in anybody's ear that, okay, this decision to handcuff you is because I fear for my life. I think that you're going to fight. So I need to put you, for your safety and for my safety, you need to be in handcuffs. For this to happen, it's got to be pretty serious. And I'm going to tell you that if you fucking fight me, this is going to end poorly, and you are not, and one of us is going to die. And this is how it's going to end. So you can either be handcuffed or you can decide that you're going to fight. And that's all done very quickly and in a manner and in a location not next to the open door of the vehicle. And you move them to the side. You move them away from any place where they can flee and get to the stupid car and drive it away and run over other officers. All right. So is this their fault? I'm going to go back. And this is one of the things that I talk about all the time. It is not the suspect's fault, and it is not the officer's fault if the officers are not trained properly to a certain extent. I'm going to get to the officer's culpability in this in a minute, but it really frustrates me that departments and police academies have really lost their way in preparing men and women to work on the streets so that it protects the suspect or persons of interest and the police officer. You got to protect both. We have a duty to protect the suspect. We have a duty to protect them. A duty. And so it is the duty of the police academy, of the canine academy, of the training that comes in after the academies, and the supervisors, which would be the sergeant, lieutenant, captains, and the chief of police or deputy chief, if there's one in there, or the sheriff or the deputy sheriff. It's the duty of the leadership to make sure that their officers are prepared to deal with a situation like this. Now, why we're handcuffing somebody in a car stop for vehicle registration is beyond me. I don't have the answers. If you have the answers, please let me know. I do not have the answers to that. That may be their first mistake. That's where that should have been the question. I mean, I know there was question in the news. I know it was question in articles that I read, but really, what is this? Is this normal? Is this normal for the police department? Is this normal Did the rookie take it upon himself? Again, that's really important to know. He was not even hardly, as far as I know, questioned about much of this. And again, I didn't listen to the testimony when they questioned him, but I'm not sure that this was like the biggest. This was the biggest deal. How did we get to this situation? We never should have got here. All right. So the next part, I'm going to go kind of move forward here just a little bit on the video before I show it to you. And it gets to the point where you got this piece of paper in the hand. Oh, this is so hard to stop. And this is from a body cam, and this is the problem I get into all the time. And I'm going to show you here that you can see at the very top there, she has a piece of paper in her hand. All right, so she has a piece of paper in her hand, which should have been dropped, right? Why is she, if she was going, this is another area that tells me that she was not prepared to go hands-on, because why do you have a piece of paper in your hand gripped like that if you were not really thinking about handcuffing this guy and wrestling him to the ground and taking him to the ground, and not allowing him to get inside that? You are not committed as the trainer. You are the trainer. Why is this piece of paper in your hand? Okay, I'm going to get to now this really important part, because this is where this next phase is important to understand why the department is culpable, why the academy is culpable, why the training for whoever conducted the training of the taser, whoever conducted the training for arrest and control techniques, whoever conducted the training of what happens in a sustained confrontation, who's the trainer, who talked about these things. These are super important, because when we get to this kind of situation, I'm going to tell you right now, oops, wrong area here, is that adrenaline and cortisol can be a cop's worst enemy. And I've been teaching this for maybe 25 to 30 years. That early on in my career, that I understood that adrenaline and cortisol are a cop's worst enemy. Now, away from the police department, this is where the jury, I don't think, got proper understanding of what it's like to be a police officer, or what's important to know about police officers, is that decision making only comes through a conscious mind. Decision making on to use any one of the weapons. So I got my gun belt here. I had to pull out of the mothballs, but you got a number of things. See, a number of tools on you, right? I got a handcuff case. I got an OC holder. I got a flashlight holder, pack set holder. I got magazine holder. In many cases, I had, this is my nunchucks that I used to carry. And so you have nunchucks that you carry. Some guys used other types of expandable batons. When I first started, we had PR-24s and straight sticks. But you have all these things that are on your belt. You often have things in your pockets you can use. Sometimes I would carry a knife like this one in my belt or somewhere in my pocket. And so I had a knife. We had a number of tools available to us that are on our belt that we can make a decision as to which ones we're going to use in a timely manner. All right. So at this moment that the fight begins, and again, there's something to be said that she may not understand exactly what was going on with this trainee. And she's probably, and you're processing your mind, okay, this was a registration violation. Why is he pulling him out, and why is he handcuffing him? And why is this guy fighting? And understanding that your brain is trying to process everything that's going on. Within 14 seconds, I think whatever it was that I counted, 14, 16 seconds of the time that she touched him to the time that she shot him, she had 14 seconds to process, to stop thinking about what was going on with the car stop, maybe her surprise of the fight that was just taking place. And now as a training officer, you're going, why couldn't this seemingly much bigger man not control the guy? This is all going through your head, right? Was the jury made aware of, as a police officer, there is a lot more to just what you see on the video. There is a lot going on in this head. Where this adrenaline and cortisol come in is that it nearly wipes almost all that away. And again, I've been training this forever and saying that police academies, canine academies, training officers, people that are teaching arrest and control techniques have to teach officers to control themselves, to train through the fear, the adrenaline pump, the cortisol pump that comes into your body instantaneously when you think that your life is in danger. That as a police officer, we don't have the luxury of going through this adrenaline and cortisol dump. When you go through these dumps, the process of thinking clearly is sometimes completely lost. And if you are not put in these positions through training, through repetitive training over and over again, where you are put into very stressful situations of training, you're going to have a much more difficult time of making conscious decisions on which weapon you're going to go to on this gun belt. What is it that this situation calls for? What does this situation call for? A registration violation. Do we need, this is so important. You have a procedure manual that says you can use force when your life is in danger or the life of somebody else. You can use certain types of force. Sometimes if you think that it's going to be only necessary to use the nunchucks, for instance, right? Are we going to use them as around a wrist? Are we going to use them as a striking weapon on their chest? Are we going to strike them with the nunchucks in the what would be the traditional nunchuck use? Right? You have to think, what is this situation called for? Are we going to use a knife? Are we going to use a gun? Are we going to use a taser? You have to, again, within 14 seconds, when she touched him, he began to fight. The adrenaline and the cortisol, if you go into fear, will kick in. And now you've lost the ability to make these decisions consciously. She's got to drop that piece of paper, to open up the hand, to drop the weapon, or to drop the paper, to draw her weapon is a thought process in some instances. There's a little bit of instinctual if you've gone through the training, but you have to know that you have the paper in your hand, because it's hard to, if you have something in your hand, to grab something. All right, I'm going to close the slide on this. And so if you're going for this weapon, you've now had to, in a short period of time, flash of a second, decide, drop the paper, grab the weapon, right? Am I grabbing the taser or am I grabbing my weapon? The taser is in this direction coming out of the belt. The weapon is in this position coming out of the belt. My hand comes down and draws this weapon, or my hand comes across and draws this weapon. A lot of discussion was made about, hey, one is lighter than the other, and they are facing two different directions. How is it possible that she didn't know that she didn't grab her taser? Because she had to consciously drop that piece of paper in an adrenaline and cortisol dump that caused her not to consciously think as clearly as she has in a classroom environment amongst her friends, wearing sweats, probably not a uniform, which is a huge mistake. You should always train in your uniform, and you should train in situations that are going to put you under the most stress. What they most often do, and what it sounded like in the testimony that I heard, they had quite a lot of PowerPoint presentation. And you can't learn life and death situations watching a PowerPoint sitting in a chair in a classroom that's air conditioned in the middle of the day. And so you have not put this trainee in a situation prior to being in the environment, or prior being put into the situation. You have not trained them situationally to think through and to know how to not go into that adrenaline cortisol dump into the body that causes you to forget things and to respond too quickly to where you've not made conscious decisions. You're now relying on your poor training. You're relying on bad training because you've not been put in the situation enough to be able to make conscious decisions in a stressful environment. And so it is not that unusual to not understand that this gun, which weighs a lot, listen to this, right? It's completely different. This is a hollow piece of plastic, which is very similar to a laser. And there is no way with an adrenaline dump and cortisol dump that these things weigh differently in the hand. That is a non-issue. And the jury should have been told through some expert saying, when you are put under a stressful situation where you have adrenaline pumping through your veins at an instantaneous moment, at the feeling of fear, weight is a non-issue. How many times have you heard a mother, there's all these famous stories of a car rolled over on an infant or something like that, and the mother is able to lift the vehicle off their kid? or two men have been able to go into a car crash situation and to do incredible things, tear a door off of a car with their bare hands. It's because none of those things matter, right? The weight or the strength of something doesn't matter because you no longer have it doesn't matter. You can't feel weight. As a matter of fact, you've heard officers who you get interviewed after a shooting. You say, how many rounds did you shoot? 2? No, you emptied your magazine and you reloaded a magazine. You shot 3 more rounds out of your second magazine. I reloaded? Yes. Did you hear I didn't hear one single round. I didn't hear the suspect's rounds. I didn't even hear my rounds. I heard nothing. Right? You can go through all of these situations, or high stress situations where an officer was forced to use some type of force, and you ask them questions about it, they have no recollection of sound or how many times or the weight or difficulty something might have been. None of that exists in an adrenaline cortisol dump when it comes to these types of situations. I'm sorry, I'm going to do a couple comments here maybe. No, that's a backache. Yeah, no kidding. Paper in hand, more concerned about legal issues than reality. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Carol and I worked at Anaheim Police Department together. And so this adrenaline cortisol dump can be very important. I'm going to read something from some articles I read. So you don't think that I'm crazy, that I'm making crap up. But I did have to go do a search to find something that really understood what this all means. So I don't know where I found this bit of information, but when you get anxious, your body makes 2 chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline wreaks havoc on every part of your central nervous system. Let me read that again, just so you know I'm not making this stuff up. Adrenaline wreaks havoc on every part of your central nervous system. Your central nervous system controls everything in your body. It can cause headaches, diarrhea, confusion, memory loss, difficulty concentrating, tearfulness, trouble sleeping, that's later, changes in eating patterns, and many other problems. Cortisol, which happens at the exact same time, is an even nastier villain. Over long periods, it can lead to migraines, ulcers, strokes, heart disease, and cancer. When you go into a situation that you've never been put in for because your training was lacked the ability to put the trainee in a position of feeling stress, to stop the adrenaline cortisol pump, to calmly go into a situation, to calmly think through what it is they're doing, to not be so stressed out, to not be so fearful, to hold back the moments of fear, to control their fear, to control their behavior, to control their thoughts. If you don't put an officer in these situations enough, they will not know how to do it in real life. The least amount of stressful situation will cause an adrenaline cortisol jump. To me, this would have been a no-brainer. I would have called the guy out and had him walk to the back of the vehicle. It would have been entirely handled entirely differently. In some cases, you might have let the guy get in the car and drive off. Because remember, this is only a registration violation. Because if you have to now wrestle with the guy and take him on the ground, if you now have to use a taser on this guy, if you now have to use your weapon on this guy, if you have to use some type of striking weapon on this guy, you're going to have to explain why you used any of these things on a registration violation. This is where you've lost your ability to make conscious decisions. And I can tell that these officers were never put through training, good standard, proper stress training, because they made some horrible decisions. This was a registration violation. Sometimes you just have to let the guy go because you know that what's going to end up happening is that you're going to end up hurting the guy and you're going to be in the hospital and the sergeant's going to come and say, all right, so this guy where he's going to have to be in surgery for a few hours to fix what you did to him. What was the stop again? It was a registration. Okay, did he punch you in the face? No. Did he threaten to kill you? No. Oh, what happened? Well, I got him out of the car to handcuff him for a registration violation. Why did you do that? Well, because he was a little hinky. He was a little suspicious. Not good enough. Not good enough. I know. It sounds very strange. I may even have some police officers go, no, that's not. Yes, you let him go. You let him get in the car and he drives off. You have his license plate. It looked like they might have had his driver's license. You go get him later. No, you don't shoot the guy for a registration violation. Again, does this sound like I'm saying that it's their fault? There is some culpability. but at the car stop. Where it becomes the department's problem is that you did not prepare these officers to be able to handle a stressful situation. If the guy fights and tries to not be handcuffed and he's resisting arrest, you have to be able to have officers that are trained not to go into the adrenaline cortisol dump where they can't make the decision, go, wait a minute, what are we doing? This is just a registration stop, and not follow through with all these weapons, pulling out all these things, right? And go into this situation where you now you have the point of no return, and you have to make this decision where then you make a bad decision. You now have shot the guy because you thought you had the taser, and you were going to use a taser when you didn't even have the right crime to be able to use a taser. The decision was faulty. It's because you've never put these officers in this position to do this. I'm going to show you one more thing before I sign off here that's important to understand, is that there's another reason why I think that she thought that she had the taser in her hand. And I want you to look here very closely. And it's so hard because I have my lower third. Number one, let me get my lower third off of there. But you have CNN's lower third. I'm just decided to use CNN because unfortunately it was the best one that I had. All right. And so I have the volume turned off, but I want you to look and see on the left side of his body, the trainee, you see his taser, the yellow. Watch. It's right in her eyesight where her handgun is and where the suspect is. So watch. I want you to watch. I wish I could slow it down, but I can't. But you see right here, see his taser? See that yellow taser? Watch, it'll flash. It'll look where it is. And my belief is, because you look how far away he got so fast when he heard her say taser, he jumped so far away. But understanding that when your adrenaline is flowing through your body, your vision can often narrow, and it narrows down this little tunnel and you see nothing around you. That's another reason why in a shooting, you don't want to get in this adrenaline dump, because you want to be able to see your surroundings. You want to see past the suspect. You want to see your backdrop. Who's in your back? Are there children in your backdrop? Is there a school in your backdrop? Between you, your gun, and the suspect, what's behind him? And so in an adrenaline dump, you're going to focus on certain things, and your eyes are going to be attracted to certain things that are important. And my belief is, and this happens really quick, you can see that taser right in the line where her hand is, the suspect is, and that yellow taser on his belt, the trainee's belt, is right there. I believe that her brain and her eyes saw the yellow, the brain processed it, and she thought that was confirmation that she had the taser in her hand. Regardless of whether she needs to reach or not, she went from paper drop to something in her hand. She saw the yellow in her vision. In an adrenaline dump, it's tunnel vision. It goes very narrow. Everything else around you is black. In that vision, you see yellow, which you recognize as a taser because you see it every day. You got to put your gun belt on. And I believe that was a confirmation to her brain that she had the taser in her hand. And again, you can look at me like I'm crazy, but I put hand grenade. So I have something that looks like a hand grenade here. So this is a smoke grenade, but it's a hand grenade. I've taken and put hand grenades in the middle of a room in a stressful situations where I've had scenarios. So I put officers in training scenarios all the time, and they don't like my training scenarios because I've made officers cry, and I've made them very stressed, and they go and they have diarrhea after some of my scenarios that I put them through. And in some of these scenarios, I've had a hand grenade on the table in between the actor, who is the suspect, and the start of the scenario, where I can't think of one right now, but I've given them information that we have an active shooter. He's already killed 2 people. When you come around the corner, you see the suspect. He has a gun. He said, I'm going to effing kill you. I'm going to effing kill you. And I've had many officers. In a night, I can train up to 50 officers on the same scenario and have maybe 10 out of the 50 see the hand grenade, which is sitting on the table right in front of them. Right? Because why? Because their vision narrows and the officers only see what they want to see. They see the gun, which sometimes he has his hand up, but he says, I'm going to fucking kill you. And he has a hand up or has the gun in his belt, and the officers focus in on that thing and they see nothing else. They don't see the hand grenade. They don't see anything behind them. They don't see it because I put them in a situation where the adrenaline has pumped into their body and the cortisol has begun pumping through their body, that it causes this narrowing of their vision where they see nothing other than what it is that they perceive to be the danger, and not the hand grenade, which is right in front of the suspect, and they will totally miss it. And so when I'm telling you that this yellow taser on the belt of the officer, even though it's holstered, she sees yellow. She has something in her hand that she thinks is a taser, and she's connecting the two because her mind has narrowed. It has caused her brain to narrow in on very few things so that she can seemingly solve the problem that's causing her fear. And she's connected the two when they don't go together. Again, I saw no expert come in and say, listen, she thought she had the taser. There's no way that she even believed she had the gun. I'm going to go to one last video here really quick, and I'm going to remove this one and stop that one. But I'm going to show you the video that you may not have seen. It's important, I think, for you to see. That tells me that there's no way. And they made a big deal about this too, but I'm going to go ahead and play this real quick. And the volume should be on. Yeah. All right, here we go. Add the stream.
I grabbed the wrong fucking gun! I shot him! Oh my god!
Jim, sit down.
Oh my god!
I got it.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Ready for it on the red.
All right, that goes on for a while. I'm sorry for the echo because I didn't mute my mic, but that is another. There's no way that she intended on shooting him. There was a clear thought in her mind that she had the taser. She again said taser, taser, taser. The guy backed off, all as in the training. She shot him in a place where what's the center mass, where she's hoping the darts would go. You would do that with a handgun also. But her reaction afterwards is total disbelief that she had used the wrong tool to neutralize the situation, that she totally believed that she had the taser in her hand. And so my argument as an expert in these cases, that where I look at officers who make decisions, sometimes split-second decisions, sometimes decisions that go over a period of time where they can think them through. I'm telling you that the culpability is lower than what I think the jury found. I believe it, although, you would think that an adult say, you know what, I don't have enough training in any of these weapons I'm using. But again, as a police officer, I know that there were things that I was trained that I thought, well, maybe that's all you're supposed to get. Maybe that's all I need is a PowerPoint presentation and shoot a dummy, which they probably did. They probably shot a dummy with the taser. They didn't really shoot somebody. And now they're thinking, well, that happens. You shoot the dummy, and then you say, okay, you take your finger off the trigger, and that's it. Oh, one last thing. She only shot once. So clearly she was not trying to kill the guy, because when an officer shoots and there's still movement, if as he was driving away, she would have shot 2 or 3 more rounds if she knew she had her gun, because the guy was now a danger to officers around him. So a police officer in a real situation where they think the suspect is dangerous, that they want to shoot and kill or stop, and he's not stopping, she would have fired 2 or 3 more rounds. In a taser, you only pull the trigger once and you hold on to it. And that causes the electrical current to stay going until you release. And so the fact she only shot once tells me that she truly believed in her mind that she had the taser. Sorry, I forgot all about that in the beginning. So did she think she had the taser? Yes. And it wasn't not even an accident, necessarily an accident that she, just pulled the wrong weapon. No, she thought that she had pulled out a taser. She thought she was holding the taser. She did everything she did other than having the right tool in her weapon, yelled taser, 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 doing everything else. She only pulled the trigger once and probably held it and didn't pull up another round. If she wanted to kill the man and her intention was to kill the man, she would have shot him once, shot him again, and as he's driving away, shot maybe 2 or 3 more times at the vehicles that drove away. Most police officers would have done that, not pulled the trigger once. All right. But my final word is that the department, the training, the academy is at fault. The training was not adequate for these officers for these types of situations. They were not prepared mentally. They were not mentally strong. They weren't able to control their emotions, control their fear, to make sound decisions. Why they decided to pull this guy out of the car and handcuff him for a registration violation, I don't know yet. I'm going to look into it further and find out if there's anything else. I don't think so. But I think the jury made the wrong decision. But as I have on other cases, the jury made the decision they made, and now she's going to have to deal with it. But I would appeal it and say, sure, she made the error, and sure, a man died, unfortunately. But it's because of her training, lack thereof of her training, not necessarily a decision that she made to pull the wrong weapon or that she actually wanted the guy dead. That is not true. All right, my friends, take care. God bless. If you have any comments as you're watching the replay, please feel free to comment. I would really appreciate that. And I'll see you at the next one. All right, take care. Bye.